legitimately how I appreciate music is how I appreciate every kind of art now. It has literally taken over my preferences for artistic consumption in every way. Yes, I have some personal tastes and I have certain things that I'm drawn to, but the defining thing I look for is high quality intentionality and production and things succeeding at what they're setting out to do. And as long as that's a thing that I'm not like morally against, if it's doing the thing that it's trying to do well, I'm more likely to like it. So I think that transcends a lot of genres. Even though I'm like not drawn to certain genres, I'll hear a song that I'm like, this is fucking nailing the thing that it's trying to do, so I like it.
Right.
That's how I feel about movies. That's how I feel about music. That's how I feel about writing.
Welcome back, friends, to episode 391 of the Ink to Film podcast, where we read the book and then see the movie. I'm filmmaker James Bailey.
And I'm writer Luke Elliott.
And this week we discuss the Coen Brothers 2000 film, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? We couldn't get enough of the Odyssey. If you didn't know, this is a kind of obscure Odyssey adaptation, although it is noted at the very beginning of the film.
Yeah, they say it in the title card, or the credits.
Yeah, it feels lesser known, though, and it is kind of a loose adaptation, which I'm excited to talk about.
Lesser known in the sense that people don't know it's an adaptation, not that people don't know this movie, because like this is a pretty well-known movie, I feel like.
I think so, yeah, and I think for the time period, there's a few like kind of historically important things in terms of like what it's depicting, but also like this film coming out when it did, and some of the technology of the time, what they were able to pull off. But yeah, it's a Coen Brothers films, filmmakers we've talked about in the past, and that I'm a fan of. Yeah, I'm quite a big fan of. I love their sort of unique voice. Even their individual solo projects that they've gone on to do now are quite interesting to me. Anytime that their material comes out, I'm excited to watch it. They have like an absurdist side to them, a serious side. They have like every kind of element of my sensibilities is represented in a lot of their work. So what was your history with this one here, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I think I mentioned this to you. I've never seen this movie. It's the first time viewing for me. It's one that I knew about. I'd seen clips from, like I'd seen The Man of Constant Sorrow. I think I had heard that it was a musical, which I guess it kind of is, but like I think I just assumed it was like a straight up musical. I didn't know the Odyssey connection until we started doing this podcast, at least, and then I think people had kind of alerted me to it. But yeah, we had just covered the Odyssey. We did the Emily Wilson translation, and then we did the Christopher Nolan film, obviously. Yeah. And then we talked about it. Like we weren't quite ready to be done with it. I'd always heard about this other adaptation. And I think this is a fun one to do because it really represents like a very different kind of adaptation, but it's one that we encounter every now and then. I'm thinking about like 10 Things I Hate About You is another one like this, where it's like, yes, it's an adaptation, but only in the loosest of sense. It's really this like completely, reimagined thing that's like borrowing pieces of it, but like dispensing with entire other sections of it, or completely unrecognizable from the original in many ways. And it's always fun to approach some of these as well, because like we don't have one kind of adaptation that we think is best and the rest are bad. Like we are, equal opportunity to different kinds of adaptation, ones that are completely unfaithful, which you could definitely say is true here, but in a delightful way. And I just think my main takeaway from this movie, watching it for the first time, was that it was a ton of fun. I love the Coen Brothers. This is definitely a prime example of their like sillier side, their like more, like you said, like kind of satirical, farcical, whatever you would call it, side. And it's a lot of fun. The music was great. It was kind of zany, but also, it feels like it has a heart, and it feels like it has, it has a purpose, and it feels like it has a lot of deeper meanings. And I love that because it's connecting to the Odyssey, and I can see all the ways in which it's doing that. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with this movie. I'm glad I've seen it now. It is one that I was kind of shocked that I had never seen. And just now hearing you say that it came out in 2000 is kind of mind-blowing. I didn't realize it was that old, but I guess it makes sense when I think back that it's been around over 25 years now. That's crazy.
To me, 2000 feels like it was like 7 years ago.
I know.
Or so
Unfortunately, not the case.
Yeah. My history with this material is I had seen it probably 2 or 3 times before, and I appreciated it as like a Coen Brothers film. I appreciated it as just like the funny sort of adventure that it was.
Yeah.
I definitely think that I am pulling more out of it now on deeper analysis. And I think like you mentioned, like there's absolutely social commentary going on in here. and even, you know, for the year 2000, I thought like pretty pointed in some ways. And I think it's like maybe a little up to interpretation, but I think that there are quite stark decisions being made for specific purposes that are kind of leading you to almost draw attention and some of the absurdity about like how ridiculous and crazy the Depression era South could be. I wonder if it would shock you to hear that this didn't start out as an adaptation of the Odyssey. They wrote a story about three people who were escaping like sort of a chain gang and then going on these different sort of vignette stories and adventures and things. And then they sort of saw the comparison to the Odyssey and then after the fact kind of added in a lot of the more Odyssey sort of like hallmarks and things that you would expect from that story. And I think in that they had said that like the interplay between those two things made the story richer and gave it like more layering that I have a lot of fun with. And especially with that idea of like Odysseus is such a like a flawed and complicated character, you know, like Emily Wilson's translation, Tell Me About a Complicated Man. And like, it's funny because this film here starts with the muse from the original work and like just to start it that way and to seed it as like, no, this is like the Odyssey. So keep your eyes peeled. It's kind of fun from the perspective of somebody studying adaptation in the way that we do, like seeing how you could go into this and know the story of the Odyssey and then also walk away feeling like, how was that an adaptation of the Odyssey? I think.
Well, a lot of the scenes like mean different things or have different takeaways, but there's certainly identifiable pieces, which we'll get into as we go through. But that makes me wonder at what point the particular language of this film came about, because they all speak, especially Ulysses. What's his name? Emmett or Everett?
Ulysses Everett McGill.
Ulysses Everett McGill. Yeah. So that's basically our Odysseus. And but it's not just him. A lot of these characters kind of speak in this like kind of flowery way, like kind of heightened way. And it reminds me of the very thing that we talked about with the Emily Wilson translation was like trying to move away from, but for the longest time was the accepted way that people thought of the Odyssey. And so I'm wondering if Joel and Ethan Coen are reacting to the translations that would have existed at the time and not the Emily Wilson one. Obviously, it wasn't written for years. And if that was like a hallmark that they wanted to transport over as they're making this film, which is set in the Deep South, Mississippi, and I think it's like the 20s or something, around the Depression. Yeah. And it's cool to like have these characters speaking in this way, and it doesn't even really feel like that distant, because I do feel like this is kind of a mythologized era in America, and so it was kind of fun to see this like mythologized version of the past in the South, and doing it in the guise of this story itself that is a mythologized past, as we've talked about, you know, over our last few episodes, where it's like this didn't really happen in the way it's a story, it's fiction, and it exists in this like other past, this other era.
I mean, it's definitely heightened, right? Like the especially like you're talking about Ulysses, our Odysseus character here, is like he's not speaking in a way that would be identifiable as like the character speaks in the Odyssey, in the original, in like Homer's work or the translation.
But it's not like
but he's not speaking.
It's not like what you would expect somebody from this era to sound like.
Exactly. He's not speaking the same way as almost every other character, and he's sort of like the silver-tongued like trickster who we know, you know, Odysseus is. And seeing him sort of like, I don't know, it's kind of poetic the way that he like stitches words together and creates these like sentences, and the way that he's speaking to people, and he seems like so smart and like he's outwitting everybody, but at the same time he's like inherently ridiculous and kind of like, you know, his obsession with his hair.
Yeah, I love how that to me it was that was a cool connection they were able to draw between this version and Odysseus in the original, where he has this hubris, right, of like needing people to know his name and, you know, firing the arrow and like all this stuff where it's like I need, you know, you to know that Odysseus did this. And that turns into him needing this particular pomade, his hair stuff, his hair,
Dapper Dan,
his smellum or whatever he calls it. There's so many funny names for it, the Dapper Dan, and it ends up being the thing that like they track, right? So it's also like kind of his hubris is getting the better of him too. So it's really cool, but it's also just kind of silly and fun. And I agree. Like his smarts were always fun to watch play out, but also it's very quaint and often still pretty foolish. It's like a you know, a smart man's version of a fool or something, or you know, a foolish smart person, or I don't know how you want to say it, but like he's not like brilliant. He just like does come up with some clever schemes. They just tend to be pretty short-sighted, I guess.
And in some ways, this is like a fun-loving send-up of the South in that way, like some of the way, like the stereotypes that you would expect.
Yeah, I chafed a little bit against some of that, but like I was okay with it ultimately. But like I'm also like not someone who speaks with a deeply Southern accent. I have many people in my family who do, and there is this persistent myth out there or perception that people who speak with a Southern accent are unintelligent. And I love that like we heighten the language here to kind of show that that's not the case. Yet we still have characters behaving in pretty foolish ways, and you do kind of lean into the ridiculousness and these all people. They just seem like they're not very smart, and so in that way, it kind of invites you to laugh at them and laugh at this culture. And I could see that rubbing some people the wrong way, but also it is like this mythologized comedy, and so like. I don't know. I was still able to have a good time with it, but like I don't want to speak for everybody. I could definitely see some people maybe feel like they're being laughed at or made fun of in a way that isn't cool.
Yeah, I could see that. But I also think there's another aspect to that, like sort of fun-loving South that they were kind of sending up, and isn't this kind of nostalgic and funny and interesting? Because there is like the dark past of the South, and that's like touched on, obviously.
It's everywhere in the movie, man. It's like the police, the criminals themselves, the Depression era poverty. Everything just seems dangerous. Obviously, racism.
Well, that's what I was getting to. Yeah, some of these characters are built up to be ridiculous, and then it's revealed that some of them are Klan members, and the way that the Klan is being depicted is like showing the absurdity of it in a lot of ways.
That's an interesting one to get into. Maybe we should save that, but like talking about literally the politicians and like how they play out in this movie is interesting to track.
Yeah, agreed. But just like thinking about all of that and how, it's like having a fun time, and there's some serious issues. There's like a lynching being led up to. So there's like really heavy stuff. And I think it's important to note early on that like there are quite a few black characters, but often the black characters in the story are all kind of seated in serving these white characters in the story. And I think they made there's a reason why they have, a massive chain gang of majority black men like working, and then they're showing like in a lot of different other settings like majority white people, and like sort of juxtaposing these two things. And I think that this story is trying to ride the line right in the middle of like because ultimately the characters here are like shown as heroes or are on the right side of history, quote unquote, in some ways. And so like we get on board with like our main character's journey in that way.
It does remind me of that, we've identified this in other movies of this era where it's like kind of quaint. It's a very safe version of like, isn't racism bad?
Well, it's like, these are the good guys, right?
These are the good guys. And like, we're going to have some black characters, but not any of our like main three, don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? Like it still feels like they could have done more, but I think the message is good. It's just like, it's that frustrating thing where like Hollywood wanted to like have the right message, but didn't want to go all the way and didn't want to commit to it. And
I just do, they do it for a certain effect as well. Like there's obviously the commentary is being made there, but what it does is it sidelines characters of a certain race. And that's obviously happening.
I kept expecting our guitar player, Tommy Johnson, the character who, he sells his soul to the devil, which is, classic Southern mythology. So I love that made it in here.
It's totally referencing a blues artist of that era named Robert Johnson, and he actually was said to have sold his soul to the devil at a crossroads and all that. So it's like kind of implanting that onto the character. And he's like our most prominent black character, and like I thought he was great in the role. But again, he's sort of like this magical character, along with like the character that they meet at the beginning who's blind, who's like giving them prophecies.
Sure. They're all just there to support our white characters. And I kept expecting him to actually become a like significant character who had like something to say or to add or to like become a part of this trio. And now all of a sudden we were going to have 4, and like it just never really happened. And even when he was there, he didn't seem like a real character.
His introduction and like what he means in this, what he does in this story, I think is fun and interesting. I just would have liked to see it, like you said, played up a bit more, like have him.
Yeah, why didn't he like join the group and become a main character? Like I don't really understand that.
And he kind of does. That's like
but they don't go all the way.
So we talked about the Coen Brothers quite a few times. We'll talk about No Country for Old Men, which we just made it into our Adaptation Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame, yeah.
If you guys haven't listened to those episodes,
I love the Coen Brothers in general, but I tend to have seen more and really love more of their like dramas. But I'm thinking back and like, was it Burn After Reading is one I've seen. Like I know I've seen a few of their more comedic.
And they have so many good comedic films. Like Raising Arizona is so amazing. They just like transition between these like different genres. A lot of them also play in that space of being like dramatic with like a fair amount of comedy.
Yeah.
Like a Serious Man.
I did see that one. It was fine. I don't remember liking it that much, but I would need to see it again.
But it's odd and it's unique and it has a voice.
I remember being weird.
I respect that movie. But yeah, we also covered on the podcast The Tragedy of Macbeth, which is a Joel Coen.
Just Joel Coen, yeah.
Solo film.
Yeah, it was a great movie.
Which I thought was excellent, yeah. And so now we're here at Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah, and they have other ones. I know True Grit, we've talked about maybe in the future.
I'd like to do that. Yeah, it's a remake of a classic like John Wayne film too, so it's like got the history there. We always talk about the filmmakers and the the author or the filmmaker, but since we have talked about them previously, I'll point you to those episodes that I just mentioned, and we go more in depth about their background and everything that they've done. So for here, I want to talk more about sort of what the DNA of the film is and how it was developed. So I'm sure you saw at the beginning of the film that Roger Deakins was the cinematographer. Yeah.
My first note I took.
Yeah.
Here we are, Roger Deakins. I'm in good hands, and sure enough, this movie looks like $1 million. It's amazing, and it's amazing that this movie that is so silly and in so many ways, and yet looks so good. I don't know. I think it creates just like a texture and a character for this film. Like every frame of it, it's something that he's so good at doing.
This film is kind of iconic for its look, but I also want to say, to your point, like, the texture and what the Coens are bringing here is like these actors are giving like excellent performances, odd, weird performances like we haven't seen out of a lot of these people before, but really cool performances. And then you get like obviously the set work, and you're getting the period piece of it all, and then you're getting Deakins filming it. And when they filmed in Mississippi during the summer, it was so green, and they wanted it to be this like Dust Bowl sort of autumn feeling, and they just had to shoot what they had. They had access to it. That's when they were filming. That's when everybody was available. They wanted it to look like I said, this old hand tinted picture. They tried to photochemically do color timing and other things to color the film, and it was failing. This is the first film that was scanned to a digital intermediary and then color corrected pixel by pixel. So this is the first film that was ever done 100% digitally colored. So this is like a landmark moment for that, because that's the blueprint for what we do now, still to this day.
Oh, really?
Of like the way that most coloring is done these days is like, even if it's shot on film, you're digitizing that.
If I were to call that color grading, would that be accurate, or is that a different thing?
Yeah, so there's color correcting, there's color grading, there's like a lot of different things go into it, but really this is a grade that you're like going from a green to a yellow like that is a grade.
It's like an intentional cast or something that you're like, you want it to look a certain way, so you're adding this to kind of everything.
Yeah, so Deakins sort of was at the forefront of this, and he apparently spent 11 weeks in the grading suite, targeting the greens specifically and pushing them towards this burnt yellow sepia tone that we see throughout. And it's so effective, and it becomes iconic for the look of the film. Like people, it really does, it's one of the first things I think about when I think of this film is its specific color grade, and that I think is something that in a lot of material, I think people think of like New Mexico, Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
that color comes to mind immediately. Like the Matrix,
he was probably being influenced by this.
Yeah, The Matrix, the green, like there's so much of this grade that like comes out of this. And I actually had read an interesting thing the other day. Did you see The Matrix in theaters?
I did.
In like 99?
Yeah. So
apparently the green that we associate wasn't as green in the actual theatrical version. Yeah. When it came to home video, they greened it up from that.
I don't know. So I did a deep dive into that particular thread because I saw it too.
Okay, cool.
And there was some disagreement in the comments on that one. And I don't know what's true. And this seems like it's now become this like talking point. There were some people asserting that that's not true. And what is true is that the original trailer was not color graded. The film was, but what they were showing is their example scenes of it not being color graded is all just trailer footage.
Well, more than likely it was graded one way or the other. It's just that how much intensity of the green did they grade it with?
Because my memory of seeing the Matrix in the theater in 1999 is that it was pretty green.
Yeah.
Now, could I swear that it was? You know what I mean? I don't know. I'd have to see it.
Well, and the other thing with the Matrix, just to draw, because I know people are immediately like, wait, if the Matrix was color graded, that the only the scenes in the Matrix were the ones that were very green, and then the outside world looked different in terms of color palette.
Yeah, it was like a particular thing they did to like visually kind of hint that you were in this simulated.
Right. Whereas this is
Spoiler.
the first film that was done 100% and done so heavily in this way to correct something in that way, to change something from green to yellow. Pretty wild stuff. Pretty cutting edge. And who would have thought for Oh Brother, Where Art Thou that was it looks like it's hand tinted. It looks exactly what how they wanted it to look.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how you would get that otherwise. There must be ways. Is it like, would you have to be using like actual chemicals or something?
Yeah, historically you would use chemicals, and or you would find a time that looked like that. You know what I mean? Like you would film,
right, just like shoot at a time like that, or you have your lighting reflect what you need.
Yeah, but even then, just those natural
lenses.
landscapes.
Could you do it with
stuff.
lenses? Are there lenses?
You could do it with some
filtration.
Yeah, that you put on a lens. But again, all of that just it's you're changing rather than changing just the greens or something like that he is. You affect an entire image when you have filtration.
Yeah, and then
so
it's like if you want to change anything, you don't have like an original that's untreated.
Yeah.
That makes
so
sense.
It's just a whole can of worms. But the title, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Never knew where it was from personally. They don't say it in the film.
Yeah.
I found that it's lifted from Preston Sturges's Sullivan's Travels. It's a 1941 film. In that film, a successful Hollywood comedy director wants to abandon fluff and make a, quote, serious, big statement picture about depression suffering called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? So within the film Sullivan's Travels, he wants to create a film called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? So this character within the film tours as a unhoused person to research it and learns that making people laugh has its own dignity and value. And I thought that was really interesting for the Coens to see what that means within that story. Take the title of a fictional film, make it the title of their real film, and then also be playing in that space of like the dignity and value of making people laugh and like some of the seriousness with that absurdity. And
yeah, because this film itself makes people laugh. I would also say within the fiction of this film, in a way that maybe shouldn't surprise anyone who watches enough movies and reads enough books. One of the other themes I was picking up on is sort of the intrinsic value of art and the way it can unite people and like overcome hatred. And it's like the secret power that our characters don't even realize that they have. And yet it seems to be their actual path to salvation is like leaning into their music. Music takes the center stage here, but like we're really talking about art, right? We're talking about storytelling. We're talking about making films, we're talking about writing stories, all of that stuff.
Totally. And I love that that's all within this kind of absurd movie that some people maybe aren't picking up all of that nuance and all the intention there. Because it's like, it's near impossible to do that without any context, right? If you're just watching something in a vacuum, you don't know these people.
I definitely think having seen the Odyssey really helped me because it just immediately clues you in that like there's a lot more going on here than it seems. It's not just this like random series of events that's happening. It's so often touching in with like these deeper themes or this like ancient story.
That 1941 film that I was talking about, like this director wants to abandon fluff and make a serious film, and it's like, is this a serious Coen Brothers film, or is it fluff, or is it something in between, or does it matter, or is there dignity in it?
Maybe that's the challenge for them to try and do both.
I love that. So the other thing we should talk about is the music. So T-Bone Burnett produced the music in the film, drawing on gospel, Delta blues, old-time country, swing, and bluegrass, essentially a survey of Depression-era Southern folk music traditions. And man, I'm not like I like folk music.
Sure.
I like true sort of like real human stories in my music, whether that's like, through the compassion of what they're talking about or just through like the musicality of it, anything like that. I love just, again, intention in art. And this music, which I am not typically like the most drawn to, be so endearing to me throughout this story and how the way that people are reacting to it and, the absurdity of it. Like there's sort of a send up of the music industry at one point, like we got to sign these guys no matter what, because the competition will and all that kind of stuff. And
before the competition does. Yeah, man. The music in this movie was great. And it's funny because I had heard a lot of it before because this is a famous soundtrack. People play it. I've heard, again, The Man of Constant Sorrow I've seen people do it at karaoke. Stuff like that. And like, I liked it. It was good. But like, there's nothing that beats seeing the movie. And like now I just have a different appreciation for it. And I feel like I like a lot of it even more than I had before. Because now it feels like an essential piece of it was missing for me. And now that that's like clicked for me, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see why people like really love this,
Yeah. I love the I mean, of course we always talk about like sound and music and films and what that can evoke, but I love so much of my music taste is sort of like shaped by films in a lot of ways. And I love just like how I love a song that comes from a movie that was made specifically for the movie that's actually like a good song and then has like so much relevance to the story. And then, like you said, derives like greater meaning because of it. I always find that process. Really fun.
Honestly, that's like one of the things that is one of the lost arts. I mean, I shouldn't say lost art. People still do it, but it's one of the great things about music videos is like a really good music video when you see it makes you understand the song in a way and makes you appreciate the song in a way that you never would have had you not seen that video. And I think the best ones do that. It's like it's a short film associated with music, and when they work really well, they'll connect, and it'll make you appreciate it even more.
So a few things that I want to say about the music in this. First is that the Coens didn't start filming until the soundtrack was like finished, and they shaped that into the script and into the film in the way that they wanted it to be like perfect, and the actors to have heard the music and then be able to lip sync a lot of it, because George Clooney's singing is dubbed by a bluegrass singer named Dan Tyminski. On Man of Constant Sorrow.
I had to look that up because immediately when he started singing, I was like, "Is this George Clooney? Is he actually the one singing this?" And I went and looked, and it was no. And the answer is no. And then I found like the pretty funny anecdote he likes to tell. I don't know if you have that story in there, but about basically how like Joel and Ethan Coen assumed he could sing because he has this family connection to a singer. Yeah. But then when it came time for him to do like screen test for it, and he tried to sing it, it was like so awful that they were like, "Oh no, this is not gonna work."
Which is fine. You don't have to be good at everything. You don't have to be a triple threat, quadruple threat. You could just be a good actor, and I think George Clooney is that. But that's such a funny story that the Coens were like, I mean, at least they knew when to pull the plug.
It's funny for them to like assume he can sing. Just because of the family connection. Yeah. Doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. The soundtrack won the 2002 Grammy for Album of the Year. It was a stunning result for a roots/bluegrass record up against pop competition. It's widely credited as sparking a broader commercial revival of American folk, bluegrass, and old-time music in the 2000s.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember being a part of that. I remember people playing this album in particular and like finding other songs of, similar style. So I feel like that at least, my group of friends were pretty entrenched in our music taste of the time. That's the era of, for me, being in high school when like your music taste defines you. But even in our group of, metalheads, I remember that creeping in. There being some of that. Yeah. I
mean, it's like good music. I that's why like people who say, "Oh, I love every genre," like people tend to like say, "What? That doesn't mean anything." Like, do you like, this? Do you like that? But like good music, I think can move anybody, and I think that's cool that you guys were affected in that way.
I agree. I mean, that's a brief aside, but like legitimately how I appreciate music is how I appreciate every kind of art now. It is literally taken over my preferences for artistic consumption in every way. It's yes, I have some personal tastes and I have certain things that I'm drawn to, but the defining thing I look for is like high quality intentionality and production and things succeeding at what they're setting out to do. And as long as that's a thing that I'm not like morally against or doesn't like grate me for whatever reason, like if it's doing the thing that it's trying to do well, I'm more likely to like it. And so I think that transcends a lot of genres, even though I'm like not particularly drawn to certain genres. I'll hear a song that I'm like, this is fucking nailing the thing that it's trying to do. So I like it. That's how I feel about movies. That's how I feel about music. That's how I feel about writing.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. Like I seek out like intention. And like if there's a story imbued into something that I can like latch onto, that I love that kind of storytelling aspect of, the tradition. Let's get back into what this is the oral tradition of storytelling of the Odyssey. And then that takes on different meanings in different cultures and different time periods and stuff. And like blues and some of the music of the South, like specifically of Black people who were using this as a means of expression in a really like suppressing time period. I think that's notable that like the film is so musical and it's so imbued with that music.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so at this point, we're going to move into plot, but I do want to remind our listeners, we have a Patreon. If you would be so kind, we would love any support that you can provide. We have bonus episodes that we put out to our patrons. We also allow you to participate in polls and suggestions in terms of like trying to decide what our next projects are going to be. And currently we are below our baseline, our threshold of what we would like to be at in order for the podcast to sustain itself. So if you could, we would super appreciate anything that you could offer.
Yeah, we just recorded an episode on Dracula, to go back to our Dracula coverage. This one in particular is the Bela Lugosi Dracula, and that's going to be coming out as a Patreon exclusive. And, you know, I had never seen that movie, so that was a fun one to get into. And speaking of polls, we just had one finish up yesterday, and that's going to determine our next project. So we can go ahead and announce it now. We're going to be doing The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which has been a long time on our list. So I'm excited to finally get to that. And that was a community selection, Patreon selection. So if you would like to be able to cast votes on what we do in the future, the best way to do that, the only way to do that, is to join us on Patreon, patreon.com/inktofilm.
All right. So the beginning of the summary here. In the summer of 1937, 3 convicts, Pete, Delmar, and Everett, escape from a Mississippi chain gang to retrieve a buried treasure hidden by Everett before the area is flooded to make a lake. The 3 are assisted by a blind man driving a handcar on a railroad who prophetically tells them they will find a different fortune than the one they seek. The trio then travels to Pete's cousin, Wash, who breaks off their shackles, feeds them, and allows them to sleep in his barn. While they are sleeping, Wash reports them to Sheriff Cooley, who torches the barn with his men. Wash's son helps the trio escape. Pete and Delmar get baptized in a river the next day, but Everett refuses to join them. The group then picks up Tommy Johnson, a young black man who claims that he sold his soul to the devil in exchange for the ability to play the guitar. In need of money, the 4 stop at a radio station where they record a rendition of Man of Constant Sorrow as the Soggy Bottom Boys. That night, the trio parts ways with Tommy after their car is discovered by the police. They then briefly fall in with outlaw George Babyface Nelson, who has been robbing banks and killing cows, but after becoming depressed, George gives the trio his cash and walks off. Unbeknownst to the trio, their radio record becomes a major hit.
Cool intro to this movie. Cool first third. We do a great job of establishing a lot of these characters. We find out about the pomade, the hair. What does he call it? The smellum. He puts in his hair. It's so good. And you know, I love the detail of him slicking it up right before he goes to bed, and then him asking for a hairnet.
Is so good.
Funny.
And it's like it's oh my god, it's so good. And it's so funny because like he is so obsessed with it, and then when it's not good,
every time he wakes up, he's like, my hair.
Yeah, if he's shocked awake, he's constantly worried about his hair. And then he's like I said, he's wearing a hat in other scenes because it seems like he's just like insecure about it, but he's like, it's like his biggest trait.
Yeah, well, at one point he got the wrong kind. They sold him, they didn't have the was it Pappy's, the one that he wants?
Yeah, Dapper Dan.
Dapper Dan, yeah, you're right, sorry. Dapper Dan's, yeah, they didn't have Dapper Dan's. He's like, I'm a Dapper Dan man. Yeah. You know, they'd try to sell him with some other one.
And I gotta highlight again, like, I think we've talked a lot about, like, technical stuff and sort of, like, you know, the filmmaking prowess and storytelling stuff, but, like, this movie is so funny to me.
It's so
like,
funny.
It's so clever, like, and some of the time the jokes are, like, dumb, but they hit you in a way, and then, like, another wave hits you later on when it's, like, and it's just, like, I love that sort of like layered thing, and they're playing with like the highbrow and the lowbrow, and like, it's all everything in between, and like it really works to my sensibilities, and I just have a good time like laughing. And
it's a really good script. Yeah, you read the script and it's funny.
Yeah, names of people, names of places, the repetition that they have about things. Like they'll say, you know, there's like the gopher. You want a gopher? He like offers him a gopher at one point, like 3 times while they're being entranced by the sirens. Eventually, like that sort of like
the runoff thing. RUNNOFT.
Runoff. Yeah. Oh, actually, it wasn't the sirens. It was the sort of congregation that was going to the water. Which I think religion is something that we should talk about as well.
Yeah, religion is definitely something to track here because that becomes a major player. And yeah, speaking of that, like they get quote unquote saved. They're in the car later and they have that really interesting conversation. That's when they find Tommy, right? And they pick him up. But they're having that conversation about how like you've been saved in the eyes of the Lord, but not in the state of Mississippi. They're a little harsher, you know, which says something, right? And then I love that he's like sells his soul to the devil, and he's like, oh, I wasn't using it or whatever. Everett has that thing where he's like, oh, I guess I'm the only one who's unaffiliated, which I thought was just a great line.
Well, and like, so the original story is seated around Greek gods. Yeah. This story is in the South. It's seated around the prominent religion of Christianity and the way that that's manifested and the way that different cultures are experiencing it. And this congregation that we see, all white. dressed in white, and that like, you know, is so telling about this group of people, and so telling about like their form of this. They have a certain sort of like exclusionary version of Christianity where Jesus, the word of Jesus, would have you believe that he, you know, would hang out with beggars and would help people that were, you know, sick and all these different things, and like, you know, all different types of people, and like, yet this version of Christianity, I think they're already drawing some stuff about that, and then yeah, just like the power of, I mean, let's just like, we don't have to spoil it, but like the end of the film, and similarly to the you know, the original Odyssey, in the way that like there may be some intervention from divine intervention.
Yeah, man, it's not, this movie is certainly about a man in Ulysses Everett here who is like, he considers himself a man of science, right? He's not like caught up in all this stuff, and yet we see him turning to prayer at different points in the movie, and it does seem to be clear that there's some sort of divine you know, interaction at the very least. So in many sense, I think that was the Coens identifying that religious element to the original Odyssey, and wanting to tell a story that's about, that like interacts with religion in a similar way with our main character here, and his sort of I don't know if it's a crisis of faith, but at least like his weird relationship he seems to have with faith. But yeah, when we see it represented in all kinds of different characters and how they, you know, wrap themselves in religion, you know, literally the burning of the cross and the KKK, and there's all kinds of different like ways this manifests, the saving of the souls, you know.
Can I just, while you're talking about a burning cross, with the KKK too, like the like the fact that like there's a line that the KKK member says later about like desecrating a burning cross, like him being like they intervened and they desecrated a burning cross, is so funny to me, that like they have such specific blinders for like what they believe is right, and all, they're desecrating a cross on their own already, and like for hateful reasons. Like,
he can't believe that they interrupted their sacred, you know, secret ritual for their secret society where they were going to do a lynching.
And I do think that this film is saying there's like a certain, like, you know, especially for outsiders, I think at least I'll say I grew up in it, and I'm not a believer. Obviously a journey I went through, and I know that you're agnostic and I'm agnostic as well.
Yeah.
And like, I just think it's interesting that the film is kind of, it has a commentary on religion too, because I think we're seeing sort of blind faith in some ways and what that does to people.
Like I said, the way that people wrap themselves in faith and use it to justify the things they do, and then also the ways in which they I don't know, like delude themselves with it. I think even you know, the Cyclops character we're going to get to, he's a Bible salesman, right?
Yeah.
Like there's all this different stuff where it's like religion certainly doesn't equate good person in this world, and in our world as well.
Yeah, this Bible salesman realizes that during the Depression, there's a lot of people who are wanting and who are like hurting, and they turn to religion, and he is ready to
selling
take advantage
the truth
of that.
of the Lord, quote unquote, right? Yeah, selling the good word. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So there's a few things here. There's this epic quest that they start off on. We see the blind prophet early on. What do you think? And this is a stand-in for Tiresias, the blind person that Odysseus meets in Hades.
Basically foretells what's going to happen, and we get a similar thing here. We get some sort of prophecy that's being told. I didn't write it down, so I don't know exactly what he says, but yeah, I picked up on that he's definitely delivering some prophecy here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, basically, he just tells them that you know they're going to be on a quest, and that it's not going to end up the way they think, or they're going to fail at their meeting the goal of the quest. And to have it in an order that's so different from the original story, like this doesn't happen till like midway through the original story, but we get it early here.
Yeah, we're dispensing with a lot of that kind of stuff. Again, a lot of these scenes occur out of order. A lot of them aren't really one-to-one. They're kind of like a mishmash of different ones, and then also like the meaning behind these scenes is quite different. You know, just it feels like more like they had a story they wanted to tell, and they're kind of borrowing some things from the Odyssey to inform the story and to add some depth to it, but not because they're trying to follow or map this onto the Odyssey.
Most of the scenes or episodes in the film are in some way connected to the Odyssey, whether it's like very loosely or very like it's almost like hard to compare them, but like everything has some sort of connection in that way. So I think that I appreciate that, and like we get it with like this cousin that they go and we find out later that Ulysses, or Odysseus stand-in here, George Clooney, took a locket or some sort of like pocket watch or something. He took it before when they went into this guy's home, and this is like that idea of like Zeus's law, the xenia.
Yeah.
This man allowed them to enter their home. He fed them, all these other things, and then Ulysses has stolen a pocket watch that he doesn't like. They have to make a quick getaway. Pre-borrowed it, yeah.
So funny.
and that could be sort of like in line with like them being punished for going against this xenia that we've talked about.
Yeah, I guess this would be like Cersei. Maybe at this point, there's the pig connection there.
Well, I think we get the Cersei thing later with the sirens, like kind of blended with the sirens because of what happens with the toad.
The transformation.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like I said, it's kind of a remix. It's kind of, there's pieces of it here or there.
Well, there's kind of multiple blind or partially blind and like one person who's like kind of identified as like the Cyclops, but then there's also another person who has like, he's blind and has different sight things that I think maybe one is a play on like Homer though, because wasn't there a legend that
Homer's, supposedly he was blind, the blind bard, yeah. But then there's a character named Homer.
Yeah, which is interesting because he's kind of the bad guy.
Yeah, there's
right?
a lot of like references, but I'm not sure how well a lot of this maps onto it, or is like this is definitely that, because it's a lot of just like remixes and here's a little reference to this is more what I was picking up on, at least.
I mean, I think a reference often can just be like this is a thing that you like know, an Easter egg kind of thing. But like I think often in this story at least, like it went beyond it being just sort of an Easter egg.
I'll agree with that. Yeah, it goes a little deeper. Yeah, no, and that Xenia thing is true, and like him having, maybe you could say that that's one of the reasons why it plays out the way that he does. Pete is upset, when he hears about it, because he's like, you stole from my kin. And he's like, yeah, but your kin turned us in. And he's like, but you didn't know that yet. They hadn't done that yet. Yeah. You stole before. And he was like, I was pre-borrowing it. And then when I found out that, then I stole it, which is just funny. But it does go to show that there is like there's like a sense of justice that they're mad at him for having betrayed. And that's going to come back time and again as we find out that, this version of Odysseus and Everett is also a liar, which is something we've seen with Odysseus in other versions.
There's one thing that I still can't really wrap my mind around, and it's why does Wash's son come and like save them in the car when the barn is burning? And then like later on, they give him like a sort of Polyphemus moment where it's like they like are like, go back to your dad kind of thing. And
and they give him the pig.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because I was like, what does this pig have to, they steal the pig, but then give him the pig, and I was like, what was the point of that? I don't know. The one thing he does say is that he references the runoff thing. So the implication is that he is able to spell, and he knows that his father is lying about what happened with his mother. So maybe he's like, screw dad, I'm gonna get these guys, and we're gonna go find my mom or something. Like, right. I don't know. It's kind of my thought is that maybe he's like, I'm gonna go, but then they are like, they kick him out and send him back.
It seems that way. Yeah, I think you're right. That's a good point.
So yeah, man, we got to talk about the actual recording. That's Wick, right? From Widow's Bay. Like,
yeah, totally.
That's so crazy. I saw him. I'm like, he's this like character actor I feel like I've seen in a million things. But
dude, Dodgeball.
Now I'm gonna think of him as Wick.
Yeah.
From now on.
He's in so many things. Wick. That show is incredible. I love Widow's Bay. Oh my God. Talk about the blend of genres, like that humor, the perfect balance of humor and horror in that, and like never got too scary for people who aren't, if you're not a fan of horror, I still think you'll like this very like Stephen King kind of horror. Really
funny scene. The kind of little schemes that are going on where they're trying to convince him to let them record. So they're like swapping their races and stuff, and because he's blind, he can't quite see them, and they're trying to get to allow them to record.
And there's an interesting thing with that where it's like, often it's said that like the white man steals music from black men. So like blues turns into rock and roll or whatever, however those things like kind of go across. And like here you see these men are going in with a black person, with Tommy here. They're going in to record, and they're like, yeah, we're black people. And like totally, that's like so fucked up to do in the first place. Later on in the film,
they think that's what he wants, but then he's like, no, I don't let black people record here. And they're like, actually, we're not.
And they abandon it immediately. And that's like, again, like there's like, they're just trying to like use black personas or something in some way, and use black people in that way. And then later in the film we'll get into it, but like they're misidentified as black people at a Klan meeting, and there's like so many moments of this, and I want to talk about it in terms of like there is, I think, a commentary being made of like the struggle of black people in Jim Crow South in around this era. And these people are just getting a taste of it in these certain moments, and they're seeing like the treatment, they're seeing how, you know, hateful it can be, how they're, you know, again, treated differently. Like, oh, I don't allow black people to record in the studio. Well, actually, we're not black. Very quickly abandon that.
Yeah.
And like black people can't do that, right? Like, right. You know, they are, that is who they are. And that's their permanent 100% of the time. So it's like almost like showing this like quote unquote like Odyssey, this difficult journey that they go through as like almost in the shoes of another, but also some of the ways it's, I would argue that it's not done, you know, as nuanced as I would like to see. But I think there is a commentary, or at least like an attempt to approach some of that feeling.
Sure. I mean, I think it's well-meaning, forcing our white characters to walk in another character's shoes for a while and experience some of the prejudice that they experience, and learn a valuable lesson. You know, it's kind of quaint, but you know, I think it means well. I did also love the little scheme that he plays with the signatures, which is like, if you're not following real closely, like you'll miss it in a second. But like he says that they're going to get paid $10 a piece, and he says I can't remember who he names. Two of them are going to have to sign with X's because they don't know how to write. And he's like, but the other four of us do. And so, you know, the totaling 6. So he adds basically 2 members to their group to get, you know, the $20 extra bucks. And it's that kind of stuff that fun little schemes that he's playing that show his cleverness.
And this is like, it's so interesting to think of an Odysseus style character that hasn't done the Trojan horse scheme that like caused the loss of life and everything, the baggage that Odysseus has, I think in multiple versions of the Odyssey. But here it's like, he kind of keeps all those like sort of sly trickstery kind of things, but doesn't have any like major,
well, he
like
does.
Guilt.
He does. He should. Maybe? He does, and he should. We just don't know about it yet. But we will learn later that he did start this whole thing off with a pretty massive lie and betrayal.
That's true. Yeah, sure. So the last thing before we move on in the plot also is this babyface Nelson that this robber, bank robber that they run into. And like the big, I think, reference, this is more of a reference, is like the killing of the cows. The Helios's cows from that Odysseus's men kill, that he warns them.
Well, and he's like
to.
he also represents this like push and pull between being a good person and a not good person, right? And there's a point in the book or a point in the film where they're like, "Are you a bad person?" And they're talking about their souls and whether or not they've been saved, and then also just their actions. But yeah, he represents this full bore, I'm a bad person, and embracing of being a bad person. And I don't know, there's certainly kind of a freedom that he seems to represent. And yet, you know, he's definitely also brought down by his behavior, as you would expect. So, yeah, he's an interesting representation, I think, of that side of just like being a bad person and embracing it.
And I don't want to talk about it in the context of like how this film is still able to talk about like the changing of like, you know, the other story was talking about like the changing of the Greeks and how things were changing, you know, in that era. And here it's like it seems like there's like a chaos versus like society, polite society.
Oh, sure. And the coming civilization that is talked about at the end, you know, this is all gonna be electrified, and we're gonna, you know, everything's gonna be connected.
It's like the you know, the eventual like I will call it a cleansing that happens. There's like a large body of water thing that happens, and that moment is very much like a renewal, a baptism of the area of like the, you know, of the South almost, and like the way that's moving forward.
Well, and also the way that the South is mythologized. This very movie is doing the thing, but like it's notable, I think, that all these people are talking about how they like old-timey music. It's not even that this is like modern music of the era. This is supposedly like the oldies. They're like, oh, I love the old-timey music. And there's even the accusation that they're like fake old-timey at one point. They're not even old-timey at all. They're fake, you know. It's just interesting, right? Because we see so much of this with, you know, a lot of conservative movements that are, you know, calling back to a mythologized past and you know, it's something that probably never existed and yet is sort of clung to as this best time, and how like it's definitely like saying something about that here, but it's also interesting in the way in which it's like engaging with that very thing.
Yeah, definitely. So moving forward with the plot here, near a river, the group hears singing and finds 3 women washing clothes. The women give them corn whiskey, and they lose consciousness. Upon waking, Delmar finds Pete's clothes lying next to him, empty except for a toad. Delmar is convinced the women were sirens who transformed Pete into a frog, and so takes the frog with them. Later, one-eyed Bible salesman Big Dan invites them for a picnic lunch, then mugs the men and kills the toad. On the way to Everett's hometown, Everett and Delmar glimpse Pete working on a chain gang. They arrive in town in the midst of a campaign rally for Homer Stokes, the challenger in the upcoming gubernatorial election. Everett confronts his wife Penny, who told their daughters that he was hit by a train. He gets into a fight with Vernon, her new suitor, and Stokes' campaign manager. While recovering at a movie theater, Everett and Delmar encounter a group of prisoners, including Pete, who warns them that an ambush has been set up at the treasure site. That night, they sneak into Pete's holding cell and free him. Pete confesses that he gave up the treasure's location to the police under torture, but Everett then confesses that he made up the treasure to convince the men he was chained with to escape with him so that he could stop his wife from getting remarried. Pete, enraged, fights with Everett until the trio stumble into a KKK rally, presided over by Homer Stokes as its Grand Wizard, and find that the Klan has captured Tommy to lynch him. The trio disguise themselves as Klansmen and attempt to rescue Tommy, but they are unmasked by Big Dan. Chaos ensues as the trio rush Tommy away and cut the supports of a large burning cross, which falls on Big Dan.
Bunch of wild stuff going on here. Let's back it up to the sirens. Yeah, I mean, clearly sirens. I mean, this is quite obviously they hear them like singing, see them on the side of the road, pull over.
I loved the reaction by John Turturro, by the way,
So funny.
and how he completely loses it. And it was like
when he screams,
his scream, and it was so
funny.
much reminded me of Odysseus tied to the mast in Nolan's film too.
Yeah.
How that like just like the oh my god, I gotta hear the song, I gotta hear the music. Man, it just like with all the memes and everything right now, it really got me.
Really funny, man. And then, yeah, the whole transformation sequence is hilarious. The idea that he's been transformed into a frog. Well, a toad. I should say he's a horny toad is specifically what he's called. Which, yeah, that does play into the Cersei thing, like, turning men into pigs because they're being gluttonous and eating so much. So the idea that he's turned into a horny toad because he was horny is just a funny play on words.
Yeah.
I love that for a while we kind of, like, the story kind of presumes that he is actually this toad, which I thought was hilarious, so that when we see Big Dan kill him, we're like, oh, he actually killed him. And it's not revealed until after that he wasn't actually turned into the toad. But you don't know because you're like, is this movie, like, where's this movie going? Is it actually going to have this, like, supernatural element or not? Because the sirens do seem, like, otherworldly and supernatural when they show up. Definitely,
yeah. And then they just, like, end up, we find out later that they just ended up turning in Turturro's Pete character. And, but yeah, that we also have now talked about Big Dan, and Big Dan is John Goodman. I think John Goodman's great. He's always good in Coen Brother films.
Yeah. What's that one? There's
Big Lebowski.
Big Lebowski, of course, but I was thinking of Barton Fink, which was that also Turturro? That's also Turturro, so that's cool. Another connection there, and I remember him being great in that movie. That's a movie I need to see again because I remember really, really liking that one. That one and Miller's Crossing is another one that I really
Miller's
like.
Crossing is incredible, so good.
Yeah. Anyway, he's great. He's great here. And when I saw him, I was like, oh, he's the Cyclops, because I thought maybe Wick, from earlier in the movie. He's not Wick in this movie, but I thought maybe he was supposed to be the Cyclops because they were doing the whole blind thing, and he had like one eye that he had really big, and I was like, oh, is he the Cyclops? But no, he's got an actual eye patch, and then he's more adversarial. And I did like that he also had the gift of gab, which was to me kind of a nod to the fact that the Cyclops can talk. Which is kind of a cool revelation in the original work. He's also just like the character on his own is such a Coen Brothers character. The way that, again, and the dialogue, back and forth dialogue, and the way that they're shooting all of that and I just love so much the reaction by Ulysses McGill, where he's like, he sees Delmar get smashed in the face, and then is like, what's going on? I still don't get it. And boom, he gets hit, and it's just like it's so funny. It's such a like classic Coen Brothers moment. It's because he's like, I feel like he's been so entranced by him or something. By this guy, like he can't even believe what's happening when he's watching it happen. And so this is our Polyphemus character. It's awesome, and he ends up killing the toad, and Delmar's like having a total breakdown about it. Oh, and the other character, the person that you were talking about, who plays the blind character, like record studio guy, Wick, and Wick in that, his name is Stephen Root. Stephen Root, that's right. Yeah, he's great. We get the introduction of this. I think it's around now, the Governor Menelaus. And we start learning about this campaign that's ongoing. And so, obviously, with a name like Menelaus, you know who he's supposed to be, you know, and he's got the challenger in this Homer, who's challenging him. And at first, it's set up that he is this reform. He represents reform. We even get a scene where they're like on the porch of this like big manor, and you know, he's like, you know, throwing his hat at all of his sons.
I do love the politics, like the funny, or at least the send up of, I don't love the politics of that, but the how it was like so quaint then, where it was like, I'm going to sweep out the competition, and he's got the broom and everything. And like, they have all these like sort of like tricks.
But also it's like still kind of that, man. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Unfortunately,
Unfortunately, it is still kind of empty bullshit will sometimes be the thing.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, clever sayings can go such a long way, and like that's one of the reasons like I could never be in politics, because like the urge to like explain things and try and be rational and coherent is so much less important sometimes than like being convincing and saying it in like a way that's memorable. And like there's just like other things that have so much importance in politics. But anyway, you know, this is obviously lambasting it too, but you know, in an effective way. But yeah, I do love it. So we meet these characters who are they represent, they're the incumbents. They talk about how they can't be reformed because they're the incumbents, and this other guy's coming in, and it seems like he's like, you know, because they don't seem like good people. They seem like they're corrupt. They're super wealthy, and then like he's gonna come in and change it. And so, I don't know. I think the Coens know that a lot of people are gonna think that this is a good thing. So that then when we get the reveal of that next scene that you talked about, where they end up at this KKK rally, and the wizard who's like presiding over the whole thing ends up being this reform candidate. So that's where I'm like, okay, there's definitely political things being said here, because yes, it's like the reform candidate is actually secretly not reform, and actually he's secretly much more into the regressive politics of the past, and he's just like pretending. But I think what is the larger statement being made is about just how like these people, these politicians, are willing to do anything to gain power. They're willing to say anything if they think that that'll be the thing to get them to get power. And we see that with Menelaus later. All of a sudden is so super behind them, right? But the only reason he's doing that is because he's identified this as a path forward to him winning, because all he cares about is power. He's not any better.
I think, and that's where I land on it too, is just like it's both sides. It's saying like both sides have people who are willing to, you know, they're like when the tide turns, they're ready to turn with it if it means that it'll succeed.
Obviously, there's truth to this, and I think identifying that the two major political parties in this country are both corrupt and often too similar to each other than we would like to believe, you know?
And specifically what I'm trying to say too is it's like a sheep's and wolf clothing situation, where it's like there may be, even within our own party, there may be people who don't believe what they're saying necessarily, and when things shift,
just
like they
power.
will shift.
Yes, and I think that's true, and politics will always draw some people who are like that and are very good at saying the things that they need to say. I mean, look at Fetterman.
I mean, and just for the sake of like the historical context too, like Trump was a Democrat for such a long time. Yeah. And like, that's just like, obviously it had nothing to do with that. It was social circles. It was
wanting power, wanting prestige. Yeah, absolutely. So my only thing that I don't love about this is how I think we've had a lot of stories about this, and it often doesn't lead you anywhere productive, and it instead can lead you in a place of almost nihilism about it, or like a feeling like it's all pointless, none of it matters, they're all liars. And I hear this so much from people, and it can create, like, if you ever wonder like why people don't vote, it's because like a lot of this sentiment is so widespread, and like I understand it.
You have the system actively working to, or like the nefarious people within the system actively working to try to create apathy.
But you know, and it's the unfortunate side effect about stories like this sometimes is that I think they can unfortunately contribute to apathy. If you start to view everything as cynical, everybody is lying, that if you can get to a point where you will no longer recognize truth, and you will no longer recognize people who maybe do believe what they're saying, right? And who maybe, you know, are worth getting behind. And it's like this alternative to that is what I hope we are looking for nowadays. And of course, like we're talking very modern situations versus 2000s. But I don't know. I just feel like this is a story that's been told a lot, and if the ultimate takeaway is that both sides are bad, and like one's secretly bad, one's obviously bad, and they're just kind of internally changing sides. But like maybe look to religion for like actual goodness. I don't know. I just don't find that to be a particularly compelling story to tell. But I think that is partly what's going on here. It's one of the things that I think I can appreciate about the movie, but is probably going to keep it from being like one of my favorite movies.
Sure,
That's kind of the ultimate takeaway.
If you get behind people who are saying the things that you agree with and they ultimately turn out to be bad people, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to do that. So I think more often than not, it's like you need to align your beliefs with people and try to believe what people are saying. And then there's a chance you get taken advantage of, and then you deal with that person and you move on. And hopefully like the greatest majority isn't that, and that's the outlier.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's a big topic, obviously, and we're kind of sidetracked a little bit with it, but like you can kind of play the other way too. Because like, yeah, you can look at it cynically and say like, oh, what, they don't actually care about these things. They don't actually believe these things. But like you can also say like you believe those things, and if they're at least serving those interests, then it can be worth voting for them or worth supporting them until they betray those very principles. But the thing is, you got to believe in some principles that are worth it, because you can follow that same logic to plenty of nefarious places. Yeah, I just don't love it when sort of the answer seems to be to like throw your hands in the air and say that nothing matters and that everybody's bad and everybody's corrupt.
Yeah, this is an interesting like the year 2000 sort of like libertarian-ish view or something, or like try like some attempt at saying like maybe there's a need for reform, but it is like we keep saying quaint because it's like we're 26 years on from this film coming out,
and maybe there was a sense of hopelessness among people saying like, yeah, but our alternatives are not any better, and that maybe was accurate for that time period. I would just hope that maybe we can move away from that. I think there's a real need for it.
So to get back to the story, we have now gotten to the point where the characters, like it's revealed that Pete gave up the location of the treasure, but Everett lied about the treasure in the first place, and they kind of wrestle, and then they end up finding this KKK like rally.
That's Odysseus lying and having a thing that he should feel guilty about, because he totally ruined these guys' lives. He even said that like I was 2 weeks away from getting freed, and now they've added 50 years or whatever onto my sentence. Or I think it's more than 50 years. I think the math's wrong.
We come up to this point and they see their friend Tommy, who they are close with, obviously, that they've like created a song with, and they're like they see what's happening, which again, the theatrics of the KKK doing these dances and singing the songs and everything like that.
Yeah, it's interesting how music is involved in every major scene, and that's one of the reasons why this does feel kind of like a musical, but I also think that they're saying something about gospel music in particular, or how music is sort of a like identifier of culture and how it does represent the values being purported by these people, and how it also like is present with every little subgroup have their own version of music. And it's so interesting too, because like you listen to the lyrics and like I feel like sometimes it's like the things they're saying are not even like lining up with what's going on at all. And you're like, how can you sing this song at the same time that you're doing the things you're doing?
I'm so glad that you bring that up, because one of the things that I wanted to say is like there were often times that like something would be played for a joke or something would be going on, and yet a really serious, weighty song would be going on. And I thought it was really interesting that they were able to like juxtapose those two things and say like, yeah, we're joking about this, but like this is also like a serious issue and like something that you should feel is heavy. Yeah. And like navigating that, and then also vice versa, like something kind of like more dramatic going on, and then kind of like more fun music comes in. Or
you could also look at it as people loving art even if they don't understand it.
Sure. Or
loving art that even if they don't agree with it, they just love the song, but they don't necessarily connect with it the way that was intended. There's something that there's disconnect between like creator and audience, maybe, and like intention and what is perceived. And anytime you got filmmakers like the Coens, it's like I assume a lot of that's very intentional too.
I like that they kind of make the KKK, in terms of what the KKK would want to be represented as, they made them ridiculous and just like bumbling.
Of course, it's amazing though how like they're chanting and they're talking. I mean, obviously this is depicting a time, but like even in the 2000s when they're making this film, the stuff they're having them talk about, persistent, nefarious ideas in our politics to this day, right? Like, it's crazy how much, this stuff is still around and still so prevalent, and how like I never can understand how people can like hold these beliefs and not immediately see themselves as the utter villains of history.
The baddies.
Yeah,
totally.
How do you not see that?
Wrong side of history. Yeah, it's crazy. And we see it all the time.
All the
Especially,
time.
I mean, today it feels like so magnified too. It's crazy.
It's become the mainstream, you know? It's crazy.
So I admit that like there is something. This is the moment where we get to like cheer for the characters, right? It's like they're saving Tommy from this possible lynching and like fuck the KKK and everything like that. I understand that it's like a slam dunk moment of like we're gonna love the characters now too, but it's like, you know, it does like kind of make it less complicated than a lot of things would have you believe. And like again, they're playing jokes a lot of the time with like the possibility of a young black man being killed and stuff, and so there's a lot going on there, and so maybe that doesn't land for everybody. But I every time you can kind of laugh at the you know the evil, I think that it like takes power away in some cases and at least like makes people think, and so I appreciate it for that.
Yeah, agreed. We do get the introduction of Penny here. His wife, obviously Penelope, is who this is referencing. I don't know. I have like some complicated feelings about this because to me Penelope is such a bastion of loyalty. She represents kind of a character of ultimate loyalty and fidelity who has stayed true despite all of these pressures, you know, all these suitors in the original story, all these opportunities to turn against Odysseus, and yet has stayed true, right? And like that is not what this Penny is. And we get this whole screed from him later too, where he's like talking about how women are like the worst thing and to like stay away from them. And like, yeah, I guess she's like kind of like willing to take him back, but only once he's like proved, I guess, that he has value to her and that he has this potential music career and that he's been pardoned. That's not real. That's like a very conditional love to me versus the more unconditional, I guess. And maybe you could say that is the string that represents the stringing of the bow, maybe. So like maybe there's an interpretation of Penelope's love being conditional, but I don't know. I don't get that. I feel like Penelope is this bastion of loyalty, and to see her character turned in this way, it was a little bit of a weird fit for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that. I do think that Holly Hunter is just awesome anytime she's on screen.
Sure.
So like seeing her and like her, she sold it for me. But yeah, I think Penelope, like I agree with you. I think it's like fundamentally changing her character.
I mean, it's funnier and it probably serves the story in a better way. You know,
almost like the messiness of it feels like more in line with story.
I did love the repeated refrain about her saying that he got hit by a train.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not him. He got hit by a train. And
I don't know. There's also something to me that like appreciates the fact that we have this character who's a woman who has like strong agency in the story and who is like making decisions for herself and is like, no, fuck you. You're a piece of shit. And like,
sure.
So there's something to be said for that version of the character too.
Yeah. But but then like after, we'll get there, but like afterwards, she keeps like having these like weird, like she's obsessed with like the ring being a certain way and stuff. So she has some like strange conditions she like keeps putting on things, which I don't know, to me like undercuts that side of things a bit. I don't know, it plays more into the like stereotype of her being difficult and like a thorn in his side a little bit.
Yeah, which they, you know, out and out say.
Yeah,
like you know, he's like, don't get involved with women, Delmar.
Yeah.
You know. All right, so this last bit of plot here. Everett persuades Pete, Delmar, and Tommy to help him win his wife back. Disguised as hillbilly musicians, they sneak into a Stokes campaign gala dinner that she is attending and perform Man of Constant Sorrow, unaware that the Soggy Bottom Boys are famous. The crowd is electrified, but Stokes recognizes them from the KKK rally and interrupts the performance. When he demands the group be arrested and reveals his white supremacist views, the crowd runs him out of town on a rail. Pappy O'Daniel, the incumbent governor, seizes the opportunity to endorse the Soggy Bottom Boys, grant them full pardons, and hire them as his brain trust. Penny agrees to remarry Everett as long as he finds her original ring. The group then encounters an exuberant George Nelson as he is paraded through town by a mob on his way to be executed. The next morning, the group arrives at Everett's cabin in the valley, which Everett had previously claimed was the location of the treasure. They are ambushed by Sheriff Cooley and his deputies, who have been lying in wait. Dismissing their claims that they had received pardons, Cooley orders their hanging. As Everett prays to God, the valley is flooded, killing the officers and saving the group, who survive by floating on top of their own coffins. Tommy finds a ring in the flotsam, and they return to town, but when Everett presents the ring to Penny, she claims it is not hers and firmly insists that she will not marry Everett without the original ring. As Everett belligerently pursues her, the blind handcart driver passes by on the railroad tracks.
Yeah, let's go back to the party, right? Like, this is kind of our stand-in for the suitors, the event with the suitors. They have to come in disguise. I guess the Trojan horse is when they don the robes of the KKK. If you would say there's a moment like the Trojan, Trojan horse,
that doesn't even technically take place in the Odyssey. So they're just like there's like a stand-in for them sneaking
in disguise. But like and then we get this part where they come in and the stringing of the bow, like I already kind of mentioned, I think is the revelation of having value that is worth something to her, and that, you know, and also like the whole like being pardoned. Now he's been pardoned by God, potentially, although not Everett. Some of them have been, but then now being pardoned in the eyes of the law. It's the kind of steps that he needs to do to like earn her back. I did like the carrying him out on a rail. You know, it's not something you often see actually depicted, which is kind of cool. I do wish that I could believe that, you know, someone revealing their connection to white supremacy would result in this day and age,
especially in this in the 1920s or whatever 30s era that the film's supposed to be in. But yeah, on top of that,
you know,
even
to give the Coens credit, I think they're trying to show that like people are caught up in this music, and it's like uniting people, and it's bringing everybody together, and their love of this. You could look at it as like a you know, creating a product, but like, if we separate it from that, it's like we're all loving this thing, and it's making us feel closer together and human, and we're having this moment, and then someone's fucking it up by coming in and worrying about something that we're not worried about, and how like that is like such a disruption, and it's such a unwelcome thing. So I like that message, and I think it works pretty well here. Again, we see Menelaus taking advantage of it. He's not a good dude. He's just taking advantage of the moment. And it seems like he's going to get reelected because of it. So yeah, that plays out in, you know, a really interesting way. And then we get this subsequent scene where now we're going to the cabin and to find the ring. And I guess they've forgotten that he's supposed to be there, that they were going to be laying in wait. But they're there, and we get the guy. Would you say his name was Cooley? And he's been set up to be basically Satan. You know, he's been described as Satan, and there's times where we see him and he has like fire reflecting in his glasses. Classic Satan.
Tommy, at some point, that, you know, I love the scene where McGill is like, you know, well, you know, the devil is bifurcated tail, red,
cloven
pitchfork
hooves,
wielding,
and
all this stuff. And then Tommy's like, no, he's just a white man like you. And then like that, like obviously, like if we were to follow that,
but he has hollow eyes, which we see are like the sunglasses, because it's clearly this guy, and he has like a hound with him, or at least we're making the connection that this guy could be Satan. And so he basically they do battle with Satan here at the end. He's gonna hang them. But as you've been alluding to, we get that kind of Deus Ex Machina. We get the God coming in and saving them with this flood, this kind of biblical flood, honestly, that's been foreshadowed with this lake. And they all survive. Floating on their coffins is an interesting symbol, right? That definitely is meaning something there. Rescued by their own mortality, perhaps. And all the other guys don't seem to survive. All the other people who were there all seem washed away, including the guys who were there digging the graves. We don't ever see them again.
Well, we should talk about that too, because like there's like three black men who are digging the graves
and singing,
and then they're singing this like really profound song, and like again that whole the placement of those characters within the film, I think it's notable that they are like there at the end. You know, historically, those would be the people getting hung and then put in graves and stuff like this. And they you know, Tommy, I think at one point the Satan sort of Cooley character or whatever says, you know, we only dug 3 graves, but you know, the fourth one, you know, he'll join you in one of these graves as well. Just like, again, just lynching, killing
But it's also weird how he's an afterthought to the story. He's an afterthought to this character. Yeah, the 3 black men who are singing are just like providing a soundtrack for the moment, but are not themselves. They're not themselves able to be saved, it seems like. And it seems like it's like the white guys are the ones who get to be saved by God. They're the ones who get to rise above this moment. So like, again, like I this is in the movie, but like it just feels quaint, and it feels like they didn't believe their own message enough to, like, I don't know, have a black character be a part of this and have it's like they didn't follow it where they should. I wish they had,
Yeah, I still am kind of on the fence of like, I can't determine whether it was like a blunder or whether they purposely had characters. And I still feel like it's exclusionary to not include characters in that way. But like they're trying to like tell a certain message,
it's like they had characters, but they didn't like make them prominent enough or give them an arc or let them participate in the story in a substantive way. Instead, they just get to be there to like be a message, to represent something. But it's ultimately reductive, I think. But cool movie, man. This basically leads us to the end. We get the guy on the return of the prophet, the blind prophet.
There is one more thing that I wanted to say that I just thought was so funny. That was our character Delmar at one point is talking about like the frog, the toad, and needing to find a wizard to to fix this. And then eventually like the only wizard that we see in the film is like a KKK grand wizard, whatever the fuck kind of thing. And not that he like, was directly involved with the toad and everything else like that, but I just thought it was funny like to be mentioning wizards and that to be like a, title of somebody like that.
I thought that was maybe like a reference to like Cersei, right? Who's the witch who is in charge of the transformation. Like we need her to turn him back. But yeah, no, I didn't even think about that potential connection to the KKK wizard.
Yeah. Yeah, what a funny turn that was, by the way, with the frog. Just the overall reveal of it and like how insane it feels in this film, because it really does the film, and this is to Everett McGill's point at the very end. They talk about like whether that was divine intervention or not, and he's like, no, they were always I told you they were going to fill in this lake, like they're going to knock it down, all this stuff.
And he looks over and there's like a cow on a roof.
Yeah, he's like, it was always going to happen this way, like but that's kind of the same thing with like the frog. Like we're as the audience being led along on a string of like, okay, we're damn, he got turned into a frog, this is a different kind of movie than I thought it was, and then that's ultimately false. That's true. So like throughout all these supernatural things kind of can be explained away by McGill's point, and I don't know, it's definitely playing in a fun space there.
Okay, yeah, I could see that too. All right, man, this was a fun adaptation. Again, it's a very different kind of adaptation of the Odyssey than what we covered previously. I don't know, maybe we should do a thing where we instead of saying just book versus movie, which is what we usually do, we can compare it maybe to also where it sits with Nolan's film that we just covered.
Yeah, I think it's almost incomparable. Like I think at this
but that's the challenge we always set ourselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we're entering into this and all three are there, it's like we already had a tough time trying to say whether it was Nolan's film or the original Homer work. Like that already feels like a daunting thing. To introduce this, I think this is such a fun, like historic inherently American look, and I think there's like a good layered look at a lot of social commentary going on here, especially for the time period. But I think that this is just like a really fun, enjoyable, clever Coen Brothers sort of like unique voice film, whereas like to compare it to something like Nolan's The Odyssey just feels like it's just like they're in different categories.
Apples and oranges in some ways.
So like I'll say Nolan's film. Like I don't know, that's
Nolan's film's top.
Yeah. And then, Nolan's film, then Homer's work, then this, and I think this is a great film. It's not deserving of last place, but it's just like that's
No, I think you're right. I think the most important takeaway is that this is excellent. Obviously I have my quibbles, which I voiced, but overall this is a great movie, man. Coen Brothers know what they're doing. Roger Deakins knows what he's doing. These are great performances, amazing soundtrack, awesome movie, very fun, very different. But I'll agree with your order. I think that's my order too. I still really want to rewatch Nolan's film. I haven't had a chance to do that. I still love it. Since we recorded our episode on it, there's been, I think, a lot more pushback that we've encountered, even from Emily Wilson herself. She's like really, expanded on her criticism of the film. I don't agree with it. I can see her points, some of them. I think some of them are maybe misguided, but that's maybe a whole different topic. But like overall, I still really loved Nolan's film. I want to see it again just to like make sure that I still feel the way that I think I feel. But on first blush, and this is my first blush of this movie too. I think Nolan's film ultimately sits atop it for me. But yeah, man, that's going to be it for our coverage of the Odyssey. If you enjoyed Oh Brother, Where Art Thou and how we talked about it, and also our coverage of the Odyssey in general, let us know in the form of a rating and review on whatever app you chose to listen on. If you're on YouTube, make sure to like the video and subscribe. We appreciate you helping bolster our numbers over there. And we are glad to have you.
And be sure to connect with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, all of those at Ink to Film, and we're basically on every social media platform. We also have a Discord server that we would recommend you join. It's a great place for us to have conversations that are not blown up into the social media sphere, and it's like sort of smaller, more intimate conversations. We talk about a lot of the projects. We have dedicated categories for each project, like dedicated channels. And then, it's just a great place to connect. We talk about fun stuff that we've been up to and animals in our lives and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we'd love to have you over there. As we mentioned before, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/inktofilm. I'll just give that link again. We'd love to have your support monetarily. It helps keep us going, and even just a few bucks means a lot to small creators like us. It really helps this show a ton, more than it would for the bigger creators. So we'd love to have your support over on our Patreon, patreon.com/inktofilm.
And thank you to Ross Bugden for the use of our intro and outro music.
That's going to be it for our Odyssey coverage, our little like coda to our Odyssey coverage, I guess, even though we had already kind of finished it before. But yeah, this was a fun one. I'm glad I've finally seen this movie now. It's one that I had heard about for a long time, so filled in the knowledge here and had a lot of fun with this one. So I guess all that's left to say is until next time.
Keep adapting.